Shelley, you work with people so much in communication with dementia, somebody who's living with dementia. Could you give us some tips, some practical do's and don'ts for really how to communicate with somebody who's living with dementia?
Sure. One of the biggest tips is to not ask memory questions. And that's a really hard thing to do. So you have to kind of keep it in the back of your mind all the time. And a memory question would be if we say, well, don't you remember? We talked about this yesterday. Or, Mom, I told you this already. I can't believe you didn't remember. And we often tend to scold a person when they don't remember. And in order to make that communication effective, we really have to hone in on that emotion that's happening behind the words. And when we do that, then we can ease in, validate their emotions, and answer with an answer that they understand.
Yeah. So when you ask somebody a memory question, how does that hit them? It's like I should remember this and I'm not remembering this, right? And then
Exactly.
there's a sense of what's the matter with me that I can't remember this?
Exactly. And it turns into a negative emotion immediately. And the problem with that is when somebody living with dementia feels a negative emotion, it takes them over. So it's hard to get them back from that.
Yeah, I mean, it's something it takes all of us over. You
Yes,
feel that negative emotion and
absolutely.
you're in that moment and it's hard to come out of it. And then you put in, that feeling of there's something the matter with me and I'm not remembering and I should.
Yes.
Can you give us some other examples maybe of what do you say in that moment?
Sure. So when somebody says something that is not a truth to you as a caregiver, um, it's not that they're wrong. It's not that they are trying to be argumentative. The person living with dementia does not realize it's not true. To them, it is true. So what they're saying is what they believe. So we have to join them where they are. And if we don't, we create mistrust. We create so many issues where now, if you say, no, that's not how it happened like this. Now they go, okay, now I don't trust you. So now you're not going to be able to effectively communicate with that person. And what we have to remember is we have to communicate from human to human and person to person and not define your loved one as her disease or his disease. So what happens is we sit there and we correct because we think that we're doing a good thing. And that is one of the most practical tips I can give is do not correct somebody who's saying something that's not quite true. And by not quite true, maybe they're saying that there's a different president of the United States, or there is, this is my uncle, and really it's their son. If we correct them, they're going to feel like they did something wrong. They're going to feel scolded, and they're not going to communicate as often as they would because they're going to feel like you don't really want to hear what they have to say.
So what do you recommend for that, right? So somebody
Mhm.
comes in and their son walks into the room and they identify him as their brother and are speaking to him as such. And for the son who's in that position, right? Mom's looking at him and saying, "Hi, Frank," which is her brother, and this is her son, Aiden. What do you suggest for her son? How should he handle that maybe in that moment?
At that point, it would be, hi, it's so good to see you. There's no correction.
Just go with it.
Just go with it. Meet them where they are in the moment. And what happens when we meet them where they are in the moment is we stop any escalation of negative of emotions to happen. So in that moment where we're just meeting them where they are and saying hello, that's a normal human interaction.
Yeah, I was going to say, don't we always meet people where they are in that moment? Shouldn't we always meet people where they are
In
in that
any
moment?
relationship, in any interaction, right? If I walked in here today and you were crying at this table, I wouldn't just come in and be like, so what are we doing today? I would first address what's going on. I see you're upset. If somebody appears as upset when they're asking a question, oftentimes we say, oh, don't be upset. It's like this. To that person, they're upset. We can't just change the subject. I've been doing dementia care and training for a very long time. And back 27 years ago, when I learned how to interact with those living with dementia, I was told to change the subject if somebody had a mistruth or something that just didn't make sense in the moment. And we did that because that's how we were trained.
Have a cookie.
Have a cookie. Yeah, here. Oh, you know what? Are you upset? Come over here. Let's have a cookie. We're going to get you all fixed up. Well, it's not fixing up because what we're doing is taking those emotions and just halting them. And that is not any way to communicate with a person. So if we kind of look at that and say, this is a person who's frustrated. This is a person who's sad. This is a person who's feeling like they're doing something wrong. We have to kind of make them feel like it's okay, they're safe, and go with them so we don't take them to a place that's a negative emotion even further in those moments.